Incredible act of courage, a white girl's surprising stand for a black classmate. After 10 minutes, Emily sat in her history class, the usual banter of her peers buzzing in the background. Today, though, the buzz felt different, sharp, almost suffocating. As Malik, the new kid, hesitated before sharing his story, Emily felt the weight of unspoken expectations pressing down on her. The daughter of a local doctor, she had always played by the rules, adhered to the norms that governed her small Midwestern town. But as Malik spoke of his experiences, the alienation, the laughter from corners she never noticed before, Emily's world tilted. A chilling silence swept over the room when Malik finished speaking. He looked vulnerable, his eyes searched for understanding amid the laughter that erupted. Each chuckle felt like a knife twisting in her gut, a reminder of her own complicity. How could she, molded by the values of respect and loyalty, allow this? Her heart raced, and her breath quickened. She was grappling with a brewing storm inside, a confrontation between the ingrained need to conform and an aching desire to do what was right. Emily glanced around, assessing the faces of her classmates. Familiarity clawed at her, the promise of maintaining the safe space she inhabited, shielded by conformity. But as she looked back at Malik, his hopeful expression crumbling under the weight of mockery, she was overcome with nausea. Would she really stand by and watch this unfold? Would silence earn her acceptance at the cost of someone else's dignity? The irony stung deeper than any comment could. She had been taught not to stir the pot, but right now, it felt like the pot was about to boil over. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The room felt like it was contracting, time stretching unbearably as 10 minutes felt like a lifetime of doubt. Emily's muscles tensed with the fight-or-flight instinct. She could almost feel the collective gaze, murmurs of her peers weighing heavily on her shoulders. Why was it her responsibility to be the voice of reason? Why did she care? Doubt clawed at her resolve. Surely, someone else would say something. But no one did. Something inside her snapped. Emily stood, trembling but resolute, feeling the eyes burning into her, a mix of disbelief and intrigue. "What you're doing isn't okay," she exclaimed, her voice wavering yet firm. The air shifted, the tension palpable as the classroom fell silent. Peers exchanged glances, confusion mingling with realization. Was she really challenging their cruelty? The words poured out, fueled by a desperation to validate Malik's pain, to confront the darkness she had hidden from for far too long. Now, as the aftermath loomed, the repercussions of her choice edged closer, whispers of dissent, glances of disapproval. Emily felt trapped, on a path where every step forward pushed her further from the place she used to call home. Her identity, her once comfortable place within her community, felt fragile against the backdrop of Malik's struggle. With Malik at her side, facing hostility herself, she realized the stakes had never been higher. The classroom she'd known was unraveling into chaos. As Emily prepared for the assembly, the microphone felt like a weight she might not be able to carry. Her palms were clammy, thoughts colliding with the reality of what she was about to embark on. What if this was just the beginning? What if she wasn't ready to pay the price for courage? Uncertainty enveloped her. The crowd before her waited, breaths held in anticipation. Emily stood at the precipice. Terrified and invigorated. How far would she go to lift Malik up in a world so quick to push him down? The room hummed with an unsettling energy as Emily stepped forward to the microphone. Was she truly prepared for this moment? The faces in the audience morphed into a blur, a cacophony of expectations and judgments echoing in her mind. She clutched the microphone, its cool surface grounding her in a way her racing heart could not. The rumbles of uncertainty crackled like static electricity, and she felt herself teetering on the edge of bravery and fear. With a shaky breath, she reminded herself of Malik's story, the isolation, the battles he faced daily. This wasn't about her anymore, it had never been. In that instant, her motivations crystallized. She wasn't just standing for Malik, she was standing against a culture that valued acceptance over empathy, popularity over integrity. Why had she allowed herself to be lulled into complacency for so long? The seeds of introspection sprouted roots deep within her. Today, she began, her voice firm despite the tremor of nerves, we've witnessed something important. We all have a responsibility to treat each other with kindness and respect. Everyone deserves that. Look around us, how often do we ignore the pain of others? The words poured out with a newfound assurance that surprised her. Each syllable felt more powerful than the last, cascading into the ethos she had long avoided confronting. As she spoke, she caught Malik's eyes, a flicker of hope igniting within him. Her heart raced. She wasn't just giving a speech. She was dismantling her own blindfolds, unraveling years of passive thinking. With every word, walls of conformity crumbled. But the lingering fear etched in her heart was far from gone. What if she faced retaliation? Would her classmates turn against her? The risk loomed larger than life, an insatiable specter whispering threats of loneliness and isolation that in those tumultuous moments, Emily realized something integral. Courage wasn't an absence of fear but the decision to move forward despite it. The autonomy she sought over her life was entwined with this personal revolution. Eyes darted across the auditorium, filled with surprise, skepticism, and a budding respect. Each glance was a choice. What would they decide to do with the unvarnished truth she presented? As the applause erupted like a dam breaking, her heart swelled. The applause felt like validation, but beneath the surface simmered unfamiliar anxiety. Had she truly shifted anything? Or was this a mere momentary ripple? Still, in that moment, a profound understanding washed over her. Returning to her seat beside Malik, she smiled through the haze of uncertainty. She could sense Malik's gratitude and admiration, a connection born not just from shared experiences but an understanding she had only begun to grasp. This was not an end but a beginning. She swore to herself that she would not let this momentum fade. A shift had begun, and she needed to sustain it, even if it meant confronting the resistance. But reality hit when she overheard a comment. Who does she think she is? The murmur was ugly, tinged with scorn and disbelief. Emily felt a sting in her chest. The brilliance of her newfound bravery darkened under a cloud of doubt. That night, in her room, she sat in front of the mirror, her reflection revealing a deeper question, the same one that had haunted her today. Would she continue to advocate for what was right, even when the cost was oh so personal? As she pondered the answer, the face of that classmate lingered in her thoughts, creating a nagging discomfort. Determined, Emily resolved that tomorrow would matter. She had to take the plunge again and face any backlash that may come, even if her own classmates turned into adversaries. The battle against indifference would call upon her yet again. One thing was clear, till she achieved this, she couldn't rest easy. She placed a post-it note on her mirror, tomorrow, stand tall. With newfound resolve but doubt still lurking, the question remained, how would she respond to those who challenged her belief in kindness and justice? Emily awoke the next morning with the post-it note still fresh in her mind. Tomorrow, stand tall. The words enticed her but left a lingering trepidation. She smoothed her hair in the mirror, staring directly into her own eyes, as if seeking some hidden fortitude. Today wasn't just another day. Today demanded action, demanded authenticity, and every beat of her heart underscored the stakes. As she walked to school, the crisp autumn air felt heavy, infused with uncertainty. Each step echoed with doubts. What if the murmurs she had overheard intensified into something more? Would she be capable of standing firm amidst the whispers? Memories of her previous speech loomed large, but with them came a new resolve. She clung to that flicker in Malik's eyes, a reminder that she could be a catalyst for change. Once inside, the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of energy and apprehension. Classmates greeted each other, some laughing while others whispered between cliques. As she approached her locker, Emily caught glances filled with curiosity and skepticism. A few students were whispering, but their words were muffled just enough to make her skin prickle with resentment. Dealing with the uncertainty took more mental energy than she anticipated. She held tight to the edge of her locker, using it as a crutch while her mind raced through potential scenarios. Would she become an outcast? Was the attention she had sought now going to turn against her? Steeling herself, she thought about what kind of person she wanted to be, strong or silent. The choice became clearer with each passing second. The moment of reckless abandon came when she entered the classroom. The teacher initiated a conversation about empathy, weaving in current events that highlighted the division permeating their society. Emily sensed a golden opportunity swirling in the air. This was her moment. Nerves collided in her stomach as she raised her hand, heart pounding. "Can we talk about the importance of standing up for one another?" she interjected, voice steady yet daring. The immediate silence swallowed the room. Eyes turned towards her, some narrowed in challenge while others held a flicker of hope. "I mean, we all see it, right? The way we treat each other sometimes, how easily we dismiss someone's pain." The words tumbled out, shaky yet increasingly clear. She noticed a few nods, but the tension was palpable. We never know what someone else is going through until we take the time to listen. A classmate, Julie, smirked. "Sure, Emily, but what do you actually plan on doing about it?" The question sliced through the thick silence. Emily blinked, feeling uncomfortably exposed. But the vulnerability opened a door to courage. She took a deep breath, recalling the faces of those who had reached out, those who needed allies. "We can start by creating a culture of support. It isn't enough to just talk. We need to act." Her heart raced as she anticipated retaliatory remarks or agreement. But then she spotted Malik at the back of the classroom, a quiet spark of determination igniting in his eyes. In that moment, she made a choice. She needed to be the change. "Malik, you've been courageous in the face of adversity. What can we do to support you better?" The directness pulled the entire class's attention back to him, shifting the spotlight. He opened his mouth, hesitation evident but also a surge of surprise. Emily felt the tide changing. She could sense a shift in dynamics. Perhaps her actions today could foster empathy, potentially create a ripple. This moment demanded connection rather than avoidance. Her body buzzed with an electric mix of anticipation and fear. All eyes seemed to weigh the gravity of the question as Malik finally spoke, his voice steady yet soft. "Just start by listening." Emily's heart swelled with a mixture of relief and pride. Today was an undeniable step towards something more significant, but lurking beneath was the sharp realization that genuine change involved confronting not only external forces but her internal fears. The question that loomed ominously at the back of her mind was whether she could continue on this path that she had forged through both uncertainty and newfound strength. As the class began to murmur and ideas flowed, Emily understood the battle wasn't over. The real test lay ahead. Would she remain steadfast, even when the voices of doubt began to rise again? Tomorrow would matter. More than ever, she needed to cultivate the courage that began to thrive within her. The unsettling echo returned, a reminder of her lingering self-doubt. The time had come to face not just the external adversity but also her profound fear of failure. How long could she hold on to her newfound resolve before the pressure became too overwhelming? The next day, dawn broke with an unsettling mixture of hope and dread lingering in the back of Emily's mind. As sunlight filtered through her window, it shone on the post-it note resting on her desk. Its words, "Stand tall," now felt more like a challenge than an invitation. In the quiet of her room, she faced herself once more, imagining how she could embrace the strength she had felt invigorated by just 24 hours ago. Carving the path ahead, she envisioned approaching Malik again. Their conversation had illuminated a profound truth: there was power in listening, but action was equally paramount. This time, Emily was not content to let her ideas simmer quietly. Today, she promised herself, she would take it further. She would propose tangible changes in their school environment. The moment she stepped into school, she noticed the buzz of energy was tinged with a knowing tension. Students were whispering in corners, the shadows of previous days looming larger than ever. Her heart raced as she navigated through clusters of peers, each pair of eyes an unspoken judgment. Once inside the classroom, Emily felt as if the air itself had thickened. When the teacher encouraged open discussion, she could feel the familiar flicker of bravery rise within her. "Can we brainstorm ways to support students who might feel marginalized?" she asked, her voice carrying a newfound conviction. The conversation began mildly but soon gained momentum. Emily facilitated the flow of ideas, her heart pounding in exhilaration. Each contribution inspired her the recognition of silent struggles among classmates, calls for inclusive events, an urge to create forums where voices could be shared freely. Encouraged by the growing engagement, she felt her own voice blossom alongside them. Then, Julie interjected again, her tone heavy with skepticism. "It's great to talk, but are any of you actually willing to step out of your comfort zones? Actions speak louder, right?" Emily swallowed hard, the challenge hanging in the air like an unsheathed sword. "I am. I want to start a small group dedicated to promoting inclusion. We can plan discussions, workshops, anything to raise awareness." A ripple of surprise crossed the room, the chance she'd been daring to grasp taking shape. "What if no one shows up?" Another voice chimed in, and dread flared in her stomach. Yet she pressed on, attempting to deflect the paralyzing fear. What if they do? What if it changes everything for someone like Malik? Malik's presence felt somehow otherworldly at that moment. She turned to catch a glimpse of his expression. He looked thoughtful and full of surprise, an unexpected warmth radiating from her willingness to stand beside him. After class, Emily approached Malik, a rush of adrenaline propelling her forward. "Would you be interested in helping out? Your perspective could really guide what we plan." The corners of Malik's mouth twitched upward, a flicker of hope barely contained. "I can help, but we need to be real about what inclusion truly means. It's not just a topic to check off on a list." Her heart raced with excitement at his agreement, but also with the looming pressure of even greater expectations. The reality of what she had proposed settled heavy on her shoulders. Actions carried weight, demands were bricklayers' stones in a foundation yet to be built. As she walked away, her mind churned. Could she live up to what she ignited in that classroom? The voices of doubt began to infiltrate her thoughts again, the flickers of terror about failure surfacing. But there was also something else brewing deep within, the anticipation of potential and the stirring of community. Each decision from now on would define the authenticity of her courage. Would she be prepared for the challenges ahead? The next day was looming, filled with uncertainty and possibility, and today had only stoked the fires of her determination. But could she blend her growing resolve with the reality of hardship to come? The courage displayed so far might just be the tip of the iceberg. Would she rise to the occasion? When the waves began to crash down, Emily awoke the next morning with a head full of thoughts, each one more daunting than the last. She sat up, staring at her reflection in the mirror, silently grappling with both anticipation and anxiety. Today would prove pivotal, not only for her but for Malik and those whose voices were often disregarded. The gravity of her intentions weighed on her, and yet a flicker of resolve ignited in her chest, coaxing her to action. School was a whirlwind of movement as she entered, her senses heightened. Conversations buzzed like distant bees, some familiar voices carrying hints of enthusiasm, while others dripped with skepticism. Would those voices sway her resolve, or could she turn them around? She maneuvered through the hallways, kindling her growing commitment to inclusivity. The post-it note from yesterday felt like a protective talisman in her pocket. Once in the classroom, the familiar chatter dwindled into a nervous hush as she prepared to present her ideas. She could feel the weight of the moment. Taking a deep breath, she remembered Malik's words about authenticity. "Today, I want to share something important," she began, voice steady. "I'm starting a group focused on understanding and embracing our differences, fostering a safe space for everyone." Silence held the air hostage. Their initial surprise morphed into a wave of murmurs. Concern etched an S face as she spoke up. "That sounds nice, but are you sure it's just not going to be more talk? What if we don't follow through?" Each question felt like an arrow aimed at her courage. Grappling with the sinking feeling of doubt, Emily countered, talk is the first step. But let us channel that into action. We can initiate meetings right after school. Sharing experiences and crafting real strategies to foster inclusion is what will matter. A tentative nod from Malik encouraged her to continue, then there were others willing to speak but couched in uncertainty. How can a small group like ours make a difference? Asked Jonah, skepticism dripping from his tone. I mean, what do we even know about real inclusion? Emily took a moment, her thoughts racing. The contrast of self-doubt and conviction stirred within her. We know our school, she replied, attempting to quell the tremor in her voice. This is our community. We can understand it. We're in the position to challenge the status quo. Every action, no matter how small, builds momentum. Once the bell rang, students shuffled out, some engaged, others still entangled in doubts. While she craved affirmation from her peers, what resonated was Malik's subtle smile amidst the chatter. It imbued her with a determination she hadn't expected. She approached him. Are you still in? Let us make sure we prioritize listening, too, Malik replied, nudging her. We can't just forge ahead with plans without truly understanding what the others feel. The mathematical precision of his words struck a chord within Emily. She had been so focused on the mechanics of her proposal, she had nearly forgotten the emotional terrain they needed to traverse together. But feeling the urgency wash over her, she realized that her earlier intention was a living, breathing entity that would require nurturing. After a long day filled with fluctuating energy, Emily returned home, her mind a battlefield of thoughts and feelings constructing the first meeting in her brain. She paced her room, allowing doubts to surface. What if they didn't show up? What if Julie's skepticism proved prophetic? As her own fears ebbed and flowed, she knew she had to dissect each one. The innate challenge of unorthodox choices lay ahead. She needed to transform her initial bravado into a sustained commitment that fostered trust and vulnerability within her group. What if confronting this fear was the next step she needed to embrace? Before she shut her eyes, the final realization clipped through her fatigued mind: she now had a mission, and her voice had meaning. But the moment to stand true would arrive again, and soon a pivotal moment in which she would have to face the ultimate doubt of her aspirations. The ticking clock heightened her awareness. Tomorrow, everything could change again. What kind of courage would she summon then? Emily awoke to the muffled sound of her alarm clock, the light creeping through her curtains illuminating the thoughts swirling in her mind like autumn leaves in the wind. While fear gripped her heart, it was now tempered with a burgeoning sense of responsibility. Today, she had meetings scheduled with a few classmates, and she could feel each tick of the clock amplifying her anticipation. This was not just about inclusive dialogue, it was also about confronting her own uncertainties. At school, her pace quickened with purpose. She navigated the hall, where familiar faces flashed by, but her focus remained resolute. She spotted several students lingering by the lockers, and in that split second, she confronted her looming doubt: what if her attempts to bridge gaps didn't take root? What if her initiatives only magnified the existing divisions instead of healing them? In the classroom, her peers trickled in, some chatting animatedly while others exchanged glances laced with uncertainty. Malik settled in next to her, his supportive presence mixed with palpable tension. "How are you feeling?" he whispered, sincerity reflecting in his gaze. "Like I'm about to dive into the deep end," she replied with a weak smile, still battling waves of anxiety. "But we have to try." When the bell rang to signal the start of their meeting, Emily rose and took her place at the front of the room. Heart racing, she fixed her eyes on her classmates. "Thank you all for being here. I hope we can communicate openly about our experiences and find ways to create a culture of inclusion that matters." Her voice carried a weight that silenced any residual chatter. To her surprise, Emma, who had been distant, spoke first. "I want to contribute, but what if our discussion gets awkward? It's hard to talk about what we don't understand." Her vulnerability ignited something in the room. "Awkwardness is part of the process," Emily replied, forced to suppress the tremor beneath her words. "We need to embrace that discomfort, it means we're growing." Hands began to rise tentatively. Jonah's brow furrowed. But who are we really to lead this? It could backfire if we don't know what we're actually doing. The conversation swelled with contrasting viewpoints, each contributing to Emily's growing realization. She was not only responsible for enforcing changes, she also had to navigate the maze of discomfort and confusion that came along with it. So, what do we do first? Malik asked, and Emily felt an electric pulse as she met his supportive gaze, her determination solidifying. They weren't just talking about change, they were embodying it. Let us break into smaller groups. Each of us can share an experience that has shaped our understanding of inclusion. After some hesitance, the classroom split into small circles. Emily joined a group with Malik and another classmate, Sarah, who had been quiet until now. Her voice was laced with trepidation, as she shared an eye-opening experience from a recent interaction that had left her feeling isolated and misunderstood. Listening intently, Emily reflected on her own journey, acknowledging in that moment her innate ability to foster dialogue and create safe spaces, an unexpected competency she had often overlooked. Melding their experiences, the three of them began crafting ideas towards actionable steps, discussing everything from potential themes for discussions to community outreach. As the hour wound down, Emily wasn't just leading. She was learning, growing, and embracing the very fears she had feared. Her drive to cultivate inclusivity had morphed into a deeper understanding of collective vulnerability and the power of listening. Yet the stark reality hit her as the meeting concluded: she would have to confront the larger societal narratives that loomed beyond their classroom. Tensions were still high, and voices outside their small circle would doubt her efforts. How would she respond when faced with outright opposition? With that question lingering, Emily closed her notebook, the weight of her responsibilities settling heavier upon her shoulders. She realized that the real journey was only beginning, and the next challenge awaited. In a world that often silenced the vulnerable, would she find the courage to speak louder? Emily sat in her room later that evening, the echoes of her classmates' voices still resonating within her. The initial rush of the meeting had faded, leaving behind a potent cocktail of hope and fear. With her laptop perched open in front of her, she visited a forum that connected students from diverse backgrounds to share their experiences. Thoughts raced through her mind. She was invigorated, yet quietly terrified of the depth of the task ahead. As she stared blankly at the screen, her reflection on the day began to take shape. She focused on Sarah's story, how her vulnerability collided with Emily's own uncertainties. Embracing those moments had sparked something deep within her, a realization that her own understanding of inclusion had merely skimmed the surface. What had started as a conversation about tactics had transformed into a revelation about listening, a skill she suddenly recognized as essential. But a question gnawed at her: how could she elevate this exchange beyond the classroom, especially when the societal winds were raging outside? She could hear the whispers of the world beyond, reminding her of the realities that many faced: real discrimination, deep-seated biases, all potentially exploding into the fragile changes she sought to foster within her peers. Determined to transform that daunting apprehension into action, Emily opened a new document and began typing furiously. She envisioned a series of dialogues modeled after her earlier meeting, but this time aimed at a larger audience, perhaps even open to those who had been more resistant in the past. The plan began to take shape, but it was ambitious. Could she really facilitate discussions that touched on such sensitive subjects? She breathed deeply, recalling how she had found a way to encourage authentic expression among her classmates. With access to the forum, she decided to draft a message calling for contributions about inclusion and personal stories, inviting students who might not typically participate in such discussions. It was a way to invite authenticity and vulnerability, creating a foundation of groundwork before inviting the outside community into the conversation. Setting her resolve, she hit send, her heart pounding with the fear of potential backlash. What if others rejected this initiative? What if her peers dismissed her as naive or inexperienced? The whispers grew louder in her mind, planting seeds of doubt, but she remembered Malik's words: change wasn't meant to be comfortable. As she began scrolling through replies and responses from other students, she felt a swell of mixed emotions. The urgency to respond to some comments held an intensity that demanded her engagement. The weight of those reflections bore down on her conscience. Some students questioned her authority to lead these discussions. Others, like Emma, expressed a desire to contribute but were cautious of their own fear of needing to tiptoe over complexities that felt insurmountable. Emily recognized the power dynamics at play: her race, her gender, factors that would influence how her persistence would be received. With each reply, she confronted the reality that standing up for inclusion would test her resolve, and in doing so, redefine her relationship with her peers. They would challenge her, confront her, and potentially push back against her ideas, but somewhere in that chaos lay the seeds of significant change. A flurry of thoughts crossed her mind. She couldn't shy away from the hard conversations or the tough feedback that would inevitably come. It was becoming clear that the urgency to act came with both external risks and internal revelations. She was contemplating just how much she was willing to stretch beyond her comfort zone. As the sun crested below the horizon, painting her room gold, a certain clarity gripped her. She was more than just a facilitator of conversation, she was a catalyst for change, taking on the intricacies of relationships that challenged her understanding of systemic dynamics. But just as she was feeling emboldened, a new realization crept in. The words of those who felt silenced could unleash a powerful ripple effect if unleashed. Would she stand firm in the face of threats or fear, and let her commitment to inclusivity prevail in the uncertain shadows of confrontation that loomed ahead? With that question weighing heavily on her, Emily felt the dawn of an unexpected journey. Would she truly thrive in the winds of dissent and build bridges where chasms once lay? The following morning, Emily awoke to a disconcerting swirl of thoughts. Each moment she lay there, contemplating the day ahead, deepened her anxiety. Yesterday's weighty commitments echoed in her mind. She was no longer the passive observer she once was. Actions had consequences, and she was poised at the edge of an uncertain chasm that seemed to beckon her forward, daring her to leap. She dressed meticulously, her choice of a deep blue blouse reflecting her mood, calm yet penetrating. As she walked to school, the air was laced with a tension that matched her own. Once through those gates, she would face the reality of her initiative head-on. What had begun as an ambitious vision now stirred a sense of trepidation. Doubt loomed large, grasping at her resolve. The school hallways buzzed with energy, but for Emily, the noise faded into a low hum as she navigated to her first class. Her phone buzzed intermittently with notifications from the forum, each ping a reminder of what lay ahead. When she opened it between classes, one comment caught her eye. Sarah had replied, "We need this. But are we ready for what comes next?" Those words struck a chord. Emily's mind raced. Were they ready? Was she ready? A visceral fear knotted in her stomach as she began contemplating the weight of expectations now resting on her shoulders. In history class that day, Emily's thoughts wandered back to the discussions she hoped to spark. As the teacher lectured on civil rights, she found herself grappling with the stakes of her mission. It wasn't merely about facilitating dialogue, it was a dive into the complexities of race and identity, a territory fraught with discomfort and potential backlash. Each student's past could emerge in ways that shifted the conversation from theoretical to personal, and the idea of that vulnerability terrified her. During lunch, Emily gathered with a small group of friends, a mixture of support and pressure flooding the space. Emma leaned in, whispering conspiratorially, "I saw your post on the forum. Are you sure about this? People are gonna have opinions." Emily felt her heart race. She could feel doubt marinate in the air, swirling between them. "I know it's a risk. But staying silent feels riskier." Emma bit her lip. "Just make sure you're prepared for the fallout." A bittersweet knot twisted in Emily's chest. A surge of determination washed over her as responsibility dawned. This wasn't merely a personal mission, it was a ripple in the pool of collective mindsets, challenging those around her to engage with discomfort. The hours dragged, each lesson bringing her closer to the moment she would face her classmates with her thoughts and questions. After school, she walked into the library where her first dialogue session was set to take place. The room felt smaller than she remembered, constrained by the weight of expectations that enveloped it. As students trickled in, their faces reflected a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Emily introduced herself, her voice faltering momentarily before she steadied her gaze. "Thank you all for being here. I want this to be a space for real dialogue, and I need your help. Then, as she began to unravel her carefully planned introduction, a voice rang out from the corner of the room, "Why should we listen to you?" Metallic ping of truth rang through her mind, echoing the fears of judgment she had harbored since yesterday. A challenge lay before her, shrouded in ambiguity. Would she allow the fear of confrontation to dictate her response? Because, she replied, heart racing, listening and sharing stories is the only way we can start understanding each other. As she grasped for support among the students' faces, uncertainty flickered. Yet something deep inside her whispered a truth. This was a profound moment, one that could redefine her own journey and that of everyone in the room. But somewhere beneath her growing confidence, a whispering doubt lingered. Was she genuinely prepared for the path she'd opened? Each heartbeat quickened as she noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Malik had come. A rush of relief and trepidation washed over her. She needed to be strong now more than ever. The time had come to face not just the room, but also the whispers of her own fears. Would she inspire courage or falter under the pressure? Emily felt the weight of the room pressing on her, a suffocating reminder of the responsibility she had assumed. The silence following her challenge felt like an eternity. She could sense the eyes of her classmates scrutinizing her, measuring her credibility against their own experiences. The question hung in the air like a storm cloud, and for a moment, clarity eluded her. Gathering her thoughts, she remembered Malik's presence. He had joined her journey, pledging support by simply showing up. She had to believe in her vision, to communicate the importance of shared narratives. Digging deeper into her resolve, she began to speak again, this time with a steadier tone. We all bring our own stories here. No one person has the monopoly on truth or experience, and that's what I want us to explore together. A hand shot up. It was David, a bright yet often dismissive student. But what if I don't want to share? What if I don't feel comfortable talking about this stuff? Emily's heart sank for a moment, but she quickly crafted a careful response. That's valid, David. Comfort is a luxury we sometimes can't afford in difficult conversations. But if we step back, we miss opportunities to grow and learn from each other. No one is obligated to share, but if you choose to listen, you can still engage meaningfully. Malik nodded in agreement, his gaze encouraging. In that instant, Emily saw a flicker of understanding softening the atmosphere. Encouragement may lie not just in being vulnerable but also in expressing willingness to listen. She decided to invite them all into the dialogue. Let's try this. Why don't we go around the room, share our names, and if you're comfortable, maybe something you've read or heard recently that challenged your perspective. As names filled the air, Emily's anxiety transmuted into a shared energy that sparked curiosity. Insights emerged, transactionally binding their experiences. One student shared a powerful podcast about racial injustice that made him rethink his position, while another recounted a recent eye-opening book. With each revelation, the emotional distance began to close, and Emily felt her initial fears start melting away, but just as a sense of camaraderie took shape, Emily sensed tension creeping back as a familiar voice broke the rhythm. This feels like a lecture, David said. Are we really supposed to believe this will change anything? The challenge in his tone was palpable, and Emily could almost feel the fragile atmosphere shatter around them. The group stirred uncomfortably. Each second stretched interminably as everyone awaited Emily's reaction. Was she ready for this? Would her confidence stand unbroken against skepticism? Grappling with the implications of his words, Emily took a breath, considering the stakes involved. Change doesn't happen overnight, and not every moment will feel impactful. Sometimes you have to engage with discomfort to understand a deeper truth. We've taken the first step simply by talking. That spark can be a start if we choose to let it be. Malik's eyes bored into her, urging her to carry on, to be the anchor this moment needed. Emily could feel the hope swelling within herself, but it did not come without a simultaneous surge of uncertainty. She was treading uncharted waters, and fear loomed heavy regarding her role as a guide. With another look at Malik, she found her footing. Let us explore the things we fear. Let us talk about the discomfort that has kept us silent. Remember, we're all here because we care to learn, and together we can dismantle those walls. As the dialogue resumed, each voice adding to the fabric of emotions, Emily felt a profound shift within her. This wasn't just about them. It was about trusting her abilities to navigate moments of tension and resilience, even when the outcome seemed unpredictable. She was becoming more than just a facilitator, she was an emerging leader, learning to harness her fears as fuel rather than allowing them to paralyze her. A realization dawned gently: she wouldn't be leading alone. But the whisper of another fear remained beneath the surface. Were her peers truly ready to engage in this transformative journey? Each interaction stirred the depths of her motivation. The true test lay ahead, as both confrontation and connection awaited just around the corner. Would she find strength amid inevitable backlash, rising above skepticism in search of understanding? As the last student finished sharing, Emily felt an electric charge in the air. The dialogue seemed poised for explosion or resolution. It was clear, the path forward was clouded with uncertainty but illuminated by the promise of change. And as she took a breath, the next wave of challenges loomed large. How would she confront not just external resistance, but also that which brewed within her? A reckoning awaited, demanding every ounce of courage she could muster. Days turned into weeks, and Emily forged ahead with her commitment to create a culture of inclusion. Each meeting saw more faces, hesitant but curious, stepping into a space they had once navigated cautiously. Emily felt a sense of responsibility deepen as her group blossomed, shifting from a singular initiative into a communal cauldron of diverse perspectives. Every conversation sifted through stories of experiences that had lingered in the shadows of their identities, tales of isolation, acceptance, and vulnerability. With each narrative shared, she felt herself peel back layers of her own self-doubt. The questions that once paralyzed her transformed into dialogues that guided their group toward understanding. One pivotal day, a guest speaker came to address the group, a local activist known for advocating for marginalized communities. As the speakers shared their journey, Emily's heart raced in anticipation of what would unfold. The conversation moved into raw territories, touching on systemic issues and personal narratives that felt all too real to each of them. At the end, the speaker invited open dialogue, and for the first time, the room fell silent, eyes flicking toward Emily, waiting for her to steer the moment. With newfound confidence, she took the floor. What we're discussing is not just knowledge, it's about action. It's about making our voices heard together. Moments passed, and amid the silence, a classmate, Sam, finally spoke up. But what if we come across backlash? What if we don't make an impact? A weighty question hung in the air, and Emily felt the weight of truth in his words. We're confronted not only with external pressures but also with our fears, she responded, feeling her pulse quicken. But change starts with each of us willing to confront our discomfort. Impact doesn't sprout overnight, it's built on the courage to persist. Across the room, nods of understanding rippled through the crowd. She could see the barrier of doubt begin to crack as Malik offered a supportive grin. They were ready to step into the fray of uncertainty together. Weeks rolled on, and Emily was buoyed by her growth. She found ways to engage more with her peers, actively seeking out differing opinions and encouraging quieter voices from the back of the room to step forward. Each piece of constructive criticism by peers no longer felt like an attack, it became an opportunity to reshape her approach. The real turning point arrived quite unexpectedly. Emily organized a school-wide discussion titled Bridging the Gap, Conversations on Inclusion. As her vision materialized, excitement buzzed through the community. She faced a swirl of emotions, apprehension mingling with exhilaration. The day of the event dawned cloudy but charged with a sense of urgency. At the front of the auditorium, Emily stood before a crowd that buzzed with a mix of eager curiosity and palpable skepticism. As she grasped the microphone, she drew in a deep breath, glancing at Malik seated among friends, his nod offering silent encouragement. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady. "Today, we'll explore what it truly means to foster an inclusive environment. We need each of you to lean into this conversation, to embrace the discomfort, because that discomfort is the birthplace of understanding. The dialogue blossomed as voices intertwined, tension seeping into the air as differing views emerged. Some questioned the need for change, others echoed the urgency for action. The discussion evolved, each point challenging the room to confront both their internalized biases and the hard realities outside the school walls. The culmination was electric, and as Emily wrapped up the session, applause thundered in the air, a raw recognition of courage not just from her, but from every participant who had laid bare their truths. The sense of shared understanding ignited a thrill of accomplishment within her. They were building a community defined by empathy rather than silence. In the weeks following, invitations to join panels and discussions surged. Her initiative cemented their roots. Teachers commended her for creating crucial dialogues within the student body and community, turning the tides of apathy. Emily was awarded the Catalyst for Change recognition from the school, a tangible acknowledgement of her growth. The culmination of their efforts produced tangible outcomes. New committees emerged dedicated to ensuring ongoing discourse around inclusivity, making Emily realize that her initial fears had lost their grip. Each conversation she sparked had become an essential thread in the tapestry of their school culture. Returning to her room that evening, the weight of self-doubt had lifted, leaving a profound sense of accomplishment in its wake. She faced the mirror, her reflection beaming back with a mixture of pride and realized potential. Through every moment of discomfort, she had unearthed a reservoir of strength she had never known existed. She wasn't just standing tall, she was soaring, ready to uplift others who still needed their voices heard. With her mission far from over, she was prepared not just to continue this journey but to embrace the entirety of what it meant to be an advocate for change. And she stood resolute, knowing that her story was just one among many, and together, they could reshape the world around them. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.